Hello, I'm Charles Coves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Coves Show, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or listening via podcast. This is episode 157. In this week's episode, I uncover the horrible costs of government bureaucracy and unaccountable government behaviour. You and I pay a huge price for the bureaucrats working in government instrumentalities of all descriptions, who are unaccountable to their masters, namely us, and who refuse to answer any of our questions, any of our complaints, or to deal properly with the problems that we, their masters, have. I specifically dig into the disgraceful performance of the Civil Aviation Safety Authority in Australia and use it as a metaphor for hundreds of other bureaucracies and statutory authorities that are making our lives much more difficult, costly, and unpleasant on an ever-increasing daily basis. There are steps we can take to push back and to save our futures. I discuss these steps, these specific steps, and I urge you to look into your conscience and into your soul where your passion lies, to consider the steps that you can take to help improve our future. Our format for the show is that I discuss today's big idea. I give you resources to help implement insights you might have from today's big idea. I do a quick review of key happenings over the course of the last week, and then the foundational principles for the show and some background about me and is now contained at the end, so regular viewers and listeners don't have to listen to me talking about it at the start because they already know it. So let's get into today's big idea. Government bureaucracies are costing us dearly in many, many ways. Government employees are called public servants. They are supposed to be the servants of the people. That has long ceased to be the case. It is now time for us to understand that politicians and public servants are the servants of the people and not vice versa. Statutory authorities are set up by governments and then in a few short years become totally unaccountable. The authorities, the bureaucracies, the departments literally do what they want. This can be at a federal, state or local level, and this structure is similar in most of the Western world. I'm going to dig deep into how this happens as a consequence of interviewing Ben Morgan, the president of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australasia, yesterday on my TNT radio program. Quite frankly, I was horrified, and that's why I use the word horrible, because what's happening is horrible. And the Civil Aviation and Safety Authority in Australia is a good example of hundreds of authorities and bureaucracies that are behaving in the same way. All in the name of making the country better, all in the name of your safety. I urge you to listen to that 1 hour episode with Ben because he articulates beautifully the problems that have happened in the general aviation industry, the disaster that's happened in general aviation over the last 25 years. There are many lessons to be had from looking at CASA, C-A-S-A. And I will then extrapolate that to other areas of government to help you think about, gosh, that is a problem. What am I going to do about it? CASA was set up. It used to be the Civil Aviation Administration Authority. And then because of one plane accident, bang, they suddenly made it a safety authority. It was set up. There is no minister in charge of it. It's a statutory authority like like a separate legal entity. Its budget is $213 million, and government cannot do anything about it, it seems, or they refuse to do anything about it. $213 million, and it is totally dysfunctional. It is destroying general aviation in Australia. Like, I can't tell you how horrified I am with the story that Ben shared with me. General aviation is being destroyed in the name of safety, in the name of complexity, in the name of rules that make no sense. And then what happens, if anyone in the aviation industry questions CASA, it takes them on in the courts. It has unlimited funds for legal cases. And I'm sure you found that with other bureaucracies as well. The government throws endless amounts of money to any position that the public servants want to uphold, regardless of proper and due process. The funding for cases is unlimited. Trust me. I was a lawyer for 20 years. You can trust me. That was a semi-joke, but you can indeed. No one is controlling the bureaucrats. The CEOs and the senior executives get paid huge six-figure sums, and they're destroying general aviation. They've also destroyed the proper functioning of airports in this country by letting them out on long-term leases, and then property developers come along and then reduce the airport space. They put up the rents on those airports, and the businesses that support general aviation, the flying schools, can no longer afford to pay the rents because they're turning the airports into office and commercial space. It's a total disgrace. I'm literally flabbergasted with what I heard yesterday from Ben Morgan. Now, you might go, what can we do about that? Aviation doesn't worry me. Well, I'll tell you what, it will worry in countries like Australia and America, any country with decent area. You need general aviation to get into all of the remote areas of this country. General aviation plays a crucial role in the functioning of Australia. It also leads to insufficient pilots. It leads to insufficient aeronautical engineers, aerospace engineers, and my son happens to be one. And by the way, my son did not educate me about all these problems with CASA. I was really educated on CASA because I've been shocked by what's been happening to pilots. And on an earlier interview with Captain Shane Murdoch on TNT Radio, it's outrageous, the injuries that have been caused to pilots. And then when one tries to put a complaint into CASA, there's no complaint mechanism. Can you believe that? A statutory authority that basically is unaccountable. Now, what is not accountable is coffee. That's given me another lease on life to keep speaking with you. So this CASA situation is repeated then with a whole string of other government departments. I'll give you an example. The ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It's a statutory authority. The government gives it $1 billion of your money. And this is what applies right around the world. This is what governments do. They take your money, set up a statutory authority, and this broadcasting corporation does what it likes. There's a board. The government appoints the board. There's a managing director, a guy called David Anderson. He does what he likes. You know, the people who complain that the ABC is totally left-wing dominated, they don't give a rat's. No, the charter is ignored, the government charter, what it's supposed to do, and it's not accountable. Another example, AHPRA, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulatory Agency, unaccountable, does what it likes. The medical profession is regulated out of existence. People who have these government departments controlling their lives learn that you can't push back against them because they destroy people's livelihoods. That's why government gets away with it, because government is using taxpayer money to attack anybody who questions government behaviour. And so people comply. That's the problem. Compliance. Let me give you another example. Local municipalities. They're going crazy with their regulations around your house, regulations around living in your suburb. This is done by bureaucrats. You see, councillors come in, they get elected, but the chief executives in these councils, they're the ones that make the decisions, and they've got all these highly paid bureaucrats. They're public servants. And the councillors, in many cases, are also gaslit. There's a gaslighting goes on because councillors who then try to do something on your behalf, the bureaucrats basically shut the councillors down. You see, these become uncontrollable, unaccountable entities. Another example is building regulations. Another example is police behaviour. You see, if you suffer a crime, someone breaks into your house, very unlikely that the police will solve any problem for you, catch the thieves, get back your assets that they've stolen. But if you go 4 kilometres over the speed limit, bang, you get a fine. You see the pattern here? Anything that's going to generate revenue for the government is enforced by the police. Anything that is a service by the police to you, the public, is ignored. It is the police in Victoria, in Australia, have been totally politicised. I also consider that's the same in Canada, America, and the UK. It's a tragedy. And that's because we, the people, we, the masters, have let it happen. Another example is government education. What's being taught to our kids, if you complain about it, doesn't matter. That's the government agenda. But if you are a professor in Texas that came in the news yesterday and one person complains about you questioning the transgender movement, you get sacked. A professor at a university gets sacked because he questioned the transgender model. But if you're living in a state and you complain about what the police are doing, no consequences. Let me give you another example. A new piece of legislation in Western Australia called the Cultural Heritage Act. So anybody with a piece of land of more than 1,100 square metres, in other words, almost everybody, they cannot dig without getting Aboriginal approval. Another bureaucracy gone mad. And then if the voice as proposed in Australia as a constitutional amendment comes in, that's going to create another huge bureaucracy. We have to wake up. We have to understand the imposition of government bureaucracies and statutory authorities on us that are unaccountable, that are hugely damaging our lives, and it's all being done in the name of making your life better. I call BS on this. Another example in the dental space is the hygiene, is the infection control. I'm being approached now by doctors who are horrified by the infection control. Look at the plastic that's used. I mean, the waste in dental practices that I've been made aware of is simply extraordinary, all in the name of safety. So what do we do about it? What are the steps that we can do about it? There are many steps that we can take. The first is to become aware. So that's why I'm doing this show, to help you become aware of the enormity of this problem. And I say again, my interview with Ben Morgan around CASA, and I'm well informed. I knew none of this about CASA. I'm stunned how the mainstream media says nothing about this. The people with a direct interest in general aviation have to now work together, and I urge them to do so, to share the message. You have to share this message to people on the street. Mainstream media has an agenda. Government is controlling overwhelmingly what goes into the mainstream media. So what do we do about it? 3 words. Just say no. Just say no. Or another 3 words. Do not comply. Stop complying with unreasonable bureaucratic requirements. Question everything from now on that any bureaucrat, that any government department that asks you, demands of you, You question it, question the legality of it, you question the authority of it, you question the reasonableness of it, you question its legitimacy in the context of the state or federal constitution that applies to your country, to your area. Question everything. Collaborate with people who know information about those bureaucracies. Collaborate with activists and dissenters, but sensible ones. You don't have to go gluing your hands to the roads, but create collaborations so you can get answers and you can create groups to get those answers. And that then leads to the next answer, which is to create communities of people who understand the problem, who then unite and get allied in their activities to push back against these bureaucracies. Create legal insurance. I'm working on a plan to create an opportunity for people to put in small premiums, large numbers of people to put in small premiums, to create the legal resources to take on any government bureaucracy. Because the reason why they get away with it is because of their unlimited monies to give to the big law firms. We can push back against that with legal insurance. You have to have the decision to push back hard, and you won't push back hard unless you understand the enormity of the cost. Well, I say it's a horrible cost that we're paying, and it's getting worse. So when you see that, you start to go, is this what you want for your grandchildren? A life of control by government bureaucrats, all being paid big bucks, adding very little value. You speak the truth. You talk the truth to people in your community. You talk the truth about how bad your council is behaving, your local council. You go to council meetings and you pay attention and you ask questions. And then the councillors get upset about that. Good, because we have to push back. If we don't, it will get worse and worse and worse. It's like these bureaucracies are like termites. If you don't handle the termites in your building, it will destroy your building. If you don't handle these bureaucrats, they will destroy your way of life. It requires you to demand responses. You might say, well, there's no point complaining because nothing happens. I know, but if one person complains. But if many people complain properly about real matters, including the failure of the police to investigate and solve crimes, nothing will change. So we have to demand answers to our questions. We have to demand action on our complaints, and we have to be passionate about it. We have to pursue it. We have to persist in it. No point asking once, and if they don't answer, oh, that's what they've done. No, we have to get committed to getting answers so that these termites at work on our lifestyles are held to account. Lastly, Buckminster Fuller said, I'm a fan of Buckminster Fuller if you're a regular viewer, a regular listener. Buckminster Fuller, who was awarded 47 honorary doctorates before he died in 1983, he said, don't tear down existing systems, create new ones. I call on each of us to think about what new systems we're going to create. There's some interesting legal strategies being put in place in Australia. There are new health systems being created. I urge all of us to think about what do we create new so that we leave these horrible bureaucracies, these horrible unaccountable statutory authorities behind. And the politicians see the writing on the wall. Our job is to put the writing on the wall. So I got passionate about that. I just see the destruction of Australia happening, the destruction of the Western world, and it's a deliberate plan to disempower us. The starting point of the thinking is that every government employee is your servant, not vice versa. Every politician is your servant, not vice versa. So let me give you some resources to encourage you along this journey. The song is called Just Say No. It's by a rapper. I think it's Chris Sky or or Just Say No. If you look it up on YouTube, it's a great, great song, but it's a rap song. It's got some fantastic lyrics, and it goes on. Doc, you must have me mistaken with someone pliable. I can't trust you if none of these companies are liable, so I'm going to stay the course like a one-way road. And then goes on, just say no to the war being waged on our minds and our bodies and our souls. They ain't looking out for you. It's a scam, and it's all about control. So doing what they say won't make it go away. Oh no, but they don't know the lengths I'll go through rain and snow. I ain't gonna fold. It goes on. So I left the doctor's office and stepped onto the street, feeling troubled by the lies and campaign of deceit. But I'm not easily defeated. I'm not one to retreat. I tried to make a post about it. They deleted the tweet. Does that ring a bell, anybody? Goes on, all according to script, going exactly as planned. Next, they're going to want to put a microchip in our hand. They say conspiracy theory, and that's all they do. But it isn't just a theory. It keeps coming true. It's a great chorus. Just say no, just say no, just say no. The book. I'm inspired to recommend that you read the book, any book on Nelson Mandela or any other activist. Nelson Mandela was willing to go to jail for 27 years, much of it in solitary confinement, to push back against apartheid. By the way, apartheid is coming back because they're going to try and distinguish people who comply and who don't comply. If you don't see the horror that we're experiencing and how it's getting worse and worse, you won't take any action. And it's reading books or being reminded of books that you have read that inspire you to not comply. That's what I'm recommending. My spiritual tip is to go back to communities, to create community, is to come from love, not fear. Fear is mental, love is spiritual. That's why you come to this show, so that you're reminded to go back into your soul space, to your passion, go into your conscience and say, what are you willing to fight for? And if you're driven by fear, which comes meant from your mind, you're going to be disempowered. When you come from your soul, you are extraordinarily powerful. And connection is the resistance. Creating community is the resistance. And caring about your fellow human beings is the resistance. That's the spiritual tip. Recommit to building communities with people, because these communities are going to be how you are able to successfully resist these government bureaucracies, these statutory authorities. My health tip. I was exposed just recently to an energy enhancement system by a Dr. Sandra Rose. I'll give you the website. It's all about recharging your cellular batteries, the cells in your body. Worth investigating. I'll give you the website. It's VT Meditation Center. V for Victor, T for Tom, vtmeditationcenter.com.au. Energy enhancement system. You see, passion is a source of energy. Your energy is what enables you to be productive. Your productivity, your ability to get anything done is a function of your energy. I'm always looking for energy enhancement. Now, lastly, before we get to the review of the week, the last resource is quotes and humor. Well, I thought I'd combine the two in a wonderful story about government, and goes like this. A major research institute has just announced the discovery of the heaviest element yet known to science. The new element has been called governmentium. Do you like that? Governmentium. Governmentium has 1 neutron, 12 assistant neutrons, 75 deputy neutrons, and 224 assistant deputy neutrons, giving it an atomic mass of 311. These 311 particles are held together by forces called morons, which are surrounded by vast quantities of lepton-like particles called pions. Since governmentium has no electrons, it is inert. However, it can be detected, as it impedes every reaction with which it comes into contact. A minute amount of governmentium causes one reaction to take over 4 days to complete, when it would normally take less than a second. Governmentium has a normal half-life of 4 years. It does not decay, but instead undergoes a reorganization in which a portion of the assistant neutrons and deputy neutrons exchange places. In fact, governmentium's mass will actually increase over time, since each reorganization will cause more morons to become neutrons, forming isotopes. This characteristic of moron promotion leads some scientists to believe that governmentium is formed whenever morons reach a certain quantity in concentration. This hypothetical quantity is referred to as critical mass. When catalyzed with money, governmentium becomes administratium, an element which radiates just as much energy, since it has half as many peons but twice as many morons. Sounds to me like most government departments. And the problem is the politicians no longer have the ability, because of this complexity, to do anything about it. So it's up to us, dear people, while we're drinking coffee, to get energized, to understand the enormity of the problem. Now I want to cover a couple of items to review the week. The Tour de France started yesterday. Today is the second day of the new financial year in some countries, and including Australia. The Tour de France, I find, for a 3-week amazing exercise, a beautiful demonstration of the effort required to be successful. But there's 198 cyclists. Only one of them is going to win the general classification. But it's a great metaphor for life. Plus, you'll also see the wonderful geography of France and Spain. The Victorian government, Daniel Andrews, the worst premier in our entire history, continues to ignore proper application of law. I say that the respect for the law is being trashed in this state and in Australia, and there are deep, deep consequences when you destroy people's trust in the rule of law. The federal government is proposing a new law on misinformation. It's proposing that anybody who questions what government says is guilty of a breach of law, that the government's going to be the sole arbiter of what is truth and what is not. And indeed, under their proposed law, if the opposition in government questions anything government says, that is a breach of the law. This is evil, everybody. You need to understand the attempt. Jacinda Ardern, the disgraced, outrageous former Prime Minister of New Zealand, she tried to bring that in, that you can only rely on information from government. Do you realise how stupid such a proposition is? That's what the Australian government is now trying to do to protect you from misinformation. Let me assure you that CASA is a great example of the lies that are promulgated by government and government departments. Never trust government. I used to trust government. I no longer trust government to do the right thing if it interferes with the interests of the bureaucrats and the politicians. A great bit of news that came out during the week was that Sweden has abandoned any commitment to net zero in terms of carbon. Now, you know I love the planet. I've been an organic farmer for 47 years. I'm involved with industrial hemp. I'm involved with regenerative agriculture. We have a chemicalized soil problem. We have a waste problem. There's no climate emergency. And I predict to you that more and more countries will realize how ridiculous net zero is and how it is not carbon that is causing climate change. There is no climate emergency. Don't get sucked in. The lack of energy, affordable, available energy, will destroy your life. Trust me. Only the elites will be able to afford electricity. And for some people in Australia, electricity costs are going up by 100%, doubling. This is a disgrace. It's part of the bureaucratic nightmare that's being imposed on us. So, lots of dramas to handle. In the meantime, I urge you to be happy. I urge you to embrace these challenges of life that we're in. we can solve these problems. When we work together in community, we become incredibly strong. When we're separate, we are weak. So, if you're new to the show, stick around for the foundational principles of the show and some more background about me. I've gone a little bit longer than normal, but these are important issues. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week. I hope that this show continues to raise your self-awareness about what you say is important. Embrace the challenges that life gives us. This is a wonderful gift that we have. It is worth fighting to live life on your terms. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show, here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Covess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the color of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.